My name is Janet Summit, and I'm the owner of Peace Through Principles. Our guest today is Stephanie Casperson, and she is a former professional ballerina and has 4 children. She has taught ballet for many years in addition, and she has also been active in educational settings with her children and on behalf of other children. She has taught many, many people and has nurtured creativity, and that's what I have admired about her. She has been my friend for many years, and we'd like to welcome her to the podcast today. Thank you.
My background, which I think may be interesting to people, is that I was a professional dancer. I danced professionally for 2 different ballet companies over 5 seasons. I trained as a dancer for, before I got my first job, I trained for 16 years. And I retired to have kids. I have 4 homeschooled children, and we have a lot of fun together. Homeschooling was a little bit of an intimidation thing for me because I didn't go to college. I chose a career instead, which is not atypical for dancers. It's something you kind of need to do when you have a young body that's good and can handle a lot of stress. So I didn't go to college, so like thinking of the academic side of school was a little bit intimidating, and probably still is if I'm being fully honest, but we've been at it for so long. My oldest is 16, he's homeschooled since the beginning, so we figured a lot of things out as we've gone. But adding art into the things that we do has always been something that kind of comes a little bit naturally to me, I think, because of my background and my experience. Having said that, so I was visiting with 2 friends on Saturday, and seeing if they'd heard about this. They also homeschool, and they were like, "Oh yeah," they wanted to come, and I was like, "Well, what's interesting about it to you?" And that's probably something I should pause and ask. But they both know that I'm not especially crafty, and so when I say that art, like a focus on art, comes naturally to me, I don't want you to imagine that I'm comfortable like having my kids work on art projects all day, or that we do everything painted or whatever. I'm kind of a neat freak, and so that's been something that's been hard that I have had to be really intentional about, is letting the kids make messes, creating. And that's something that I kind of learned, was that creation is not a clean process on any level, no matter what you're creating. If you're, working in the garden, if you're creating a meal, if you're creating a piece of music, there is a mess, whether it's a mess of sound or whatever it is. And that was something that I kind of had to recognize and kind of let go. Okay, this is going to be messy, so there's going to be a time to create, and then there's going to be a time to clean up, and that really helped. Anyway, but maybe it's kind of a bizarre tangent for the whole thing, but that was something I struggled with, is that there will be times when it's chaos, and that's okay. That's okay.
Stephanie, I just want to say that is a really interesting idea, because if I think of it in terms of there's a time to create and there's a time to clean up, I can give myself permission to have it be messy during the creating time. And that's, I think, what people struggle with but it's so much chaos.
Totally. I think that's been my turn. I have a girlfriend. She and I were dancers together, and we lived in Seattle, and she is so wonderful about letting her children have that space and as much time as they need. And I really admire people who aren't stressed by that chaos that creation brings. So I view it as a personal weakness, actually, to be anxious about, like, when are you going to put the markers away? but that really helps me to recognize, there's no such thing as creation in a way that doesn't create some form of chaos or mess.
Well, and I don't have to straighten at the same time as I'm creating.
Absolutely. Yeah. So anyway, I think I do understand. So basically you're asking how to find approaches that work for each different children given the fact that they are different with different strengths and interests, and yeah, that's about right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so I hopefully will get into that. And Brooke, if you feel like I haven't kind of answered that or given you some ideas, will you let me know?
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. So what I wanted to start with, and maybe it's not the best place to start, but I find it so fascinating, and it's part of where I get a lot of passion for talking about this sort of thing and teaching about it, is how art benefits children, us as human beings. It's so if you kind of think, oh, art is nice and I'd like to try and do it, here's why you should think art is crucial, and I need to, as much as I can, as much as I'm able, as much as my children put up with it, kind of figure it out. So here we have, and does that look backwards to everybody?
No, it looks good.
It doesn't? Okay. That looks backwards to me. You
No,
can
it's right.
Okay. Anyway, so I've got this list, this very low tech list of art gives kids, and all of these, this list I pulled from my own experience and my own observation, but there are studies that validate all of this. Some of it all in the same study, and some of it individually. So for those who are on the phone, I'm not just gonna hold this up and go, there you go. I'm gonna read through it, and if you want to have something bullet pointed, or you go, what exactly does that mean? Let me know. So,
and I can give anyone who watches this at a future date a copy of that if they send me an email at peacethroughprinciples@gmail.com.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Jenna. And I will share this document with you because there are a couple of pages. So art gives kids an ability to communicate with and relate to others, not dependent on language, which I love because, children are young. And sometimes we don't have words, even when we speak well, we don't have words. And so it gives us that ability to express and to receive expressions that aren't verbal expressions of ideas, feelings, emotions, etc. Art gives kids empathy, and that's when we feel someone else's expression. Art gives kids resiliency, or the ability to keep going despite mistakes. And that's something that I've seen my kids grow in. In art, like in math, if you make a mistake, you've got the answer wrong. And in spelling, if you make a mistake, you've spelled the word wrong. But in art, the example that I wanted to share with ballet, so George Balanchine is this famous choreographer. He started the New York City Ballet. He's from Russia. His work is genius, and he reshaped ballet forever. I mean, his influence continues to exist, and I don't know how many ballets he created, but probably in over 100. Anyway, so he has this beautiful ballet called Serenade, which is to Tchaikovsky's Serenade for Strings, and it's absolutely gorgeous. If you want to watch it, Rachel might love it. There's no story to it whatsoever, but if you're familiar with Tchaikovsky's Serenade for Strings, it is an absolutely inspired piece of music. And the ballet doesn't detract from that. But there's this one moment in the ballet where he has the dancers in this formation, and they're all standing and they're holding a pose. Well, one day, one of the dancers who was rehearsing was late, and they'd arrived at this spot in the, they'd begun or arrived at the spot in the rehearsal, and they're all holding this pose. And she arrives late, and she, hurries and puts down her things, and she wanders through the dancers and takes her pose. And he was so moved by the beauty of that moment, of her kind of like weaving in and out, and then arriving and taking the pose with all the other dancers, that he kept it in the ballet. So that's something, if you want to YouTube it, that you can see. And so that's one small example, but I think that happens all the time. I know in ballet, like if you're working with a live choreographer, for example, I set a piece a couple of years ago to a piece of cello music, and we got to a certain moment, and I was like, I don't really know what to do with this music, and my dancer didn't either, but the way she was standing there a little bit confused, I thought, oh, that's beautiful. For this, 8 counts, we'll have you stand there looking confused. And I really liked it. So that resiliency, or the idea that mistakes can be beautiful, that we can learn from them, that they can, become part of our experience or part of our expression, that exists in every form of art, and I love it. I think that's just really wonderful. Gives kids the freedom that comes with discipline, and I think anyone who's studied like a piece, like played an instrument or learned painting or whatever, you have this idea of how you want the music to sound or how you want the picture to look, but you don't begin having the skill to make that happen and make that exist in real life. And so it takes a lot of work, and the more you work, the freer you are to create exactly what's in your mind. And I've recently been like, I need to remember that for my own life. If I want the freedom of a healthy, happy body, I need the discipline of eating well and of taking care of my body. And so just that concept is, like, you go, oh, working hard and being disciplined actually gives me freedom. Art gives kids patience in the process. I describe that as the growth mindset versus the instant gratification mindset, which is kind of ties back to freedom from discipline. Art gives kids a safe space and method for working through events or emotions too overwhelming to process otherwise. When I wrote that out, I thought of a girlfriend of mine who wants to do art therapy for veterans. And I was like, that's like a big example. And there are children that are going through really big things. But sometimes, at least in my life, after I quit when I was 20, and I thought I was done. I did wind up going back to ballet, but I was just like, yeah, I'm done. I'm going to go on a mission. And I just found sometimes that I had so much energy and conflict inside just from living a normal life, and how I processed that was like, I need a ballet class. So I'd go like beat myself up physically in a ballet class and get all of that inner energy out, and I would feel a lot better. So it doesn't have to be a big thing that you're receiving therapy for. It can be teenage angst or sadness or whatever. It gives them a place and a way to work through that. And it's a vehicle for their imaginations. And that's something, when my oldest daughter was really little, she loved to dance around the house, and no matter what music was on, she was dancing. And at one point, and I would just love sitting there watching her, but at one point she's in her wonderful move and so excited, and she said to me, Mom, are you imagining what I'm imagining? It was darling, and I just laughed, and I was like, no, I'm sure I'm not, but tell me about what you're imagining, because I want to know about it. But through art, they can take this world in their minds, and they can start to bring it into our world, to make it into this physical form, whatever their art is. And so all of those things are just so wonderful. It's just such a gift. Anyway, so if there's no questions about that, my next part is just how to bring art into our child's realm of existence, or to demonstrate that creative expression to demonstrate to our children that creative expression has value. And so, yeah, should I keep going, or does anyone have any questions or want to talk about what we just...
Hey, Steph, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. I do have a question. When you talked about like art and mistakes, do you ever have, like, I feel like my kids, especially, some of them are heavy on comparisons, or like, this doesn't look like what I was trying to create. This doesn't look like, you know what I mean, what they were intending for, and it kind of kills the experience for them. So how do you handle that, like with mistakes and what they're hoping to have expressed in their creativity somehow, and it flops?
Yeah. Well, that is a really good question. I know that I've seen my kids experience that. I think the thing that I try and communicate to them is an empathy about, like, and that's kind of, I think, what comes from practicing like an artistic discipline. Like you get peace in the process, like it is a process, and so you can appreciate the creation now for what it is, and then you can say, like, and keep working. Maybe, Emily, one thought might be to look more often at some of their older creations and help them see the progression. If it's a drawing, or as when I was teaching little kid classes and they would be dancing around, like I would point out the things that I saw them do that was new, that was adding to, what they've done, so that they can recognize there is growth there, even though I'm not the sugar plum fairy yet, if that makes sense. Do you think that helps? Do you think that would work?
I think that's a really good idea. I feel like some of my kids, with that, they just kind of give up and won't attempt it again.
Oh yeah.
And down the road, I can see them experimenting with different mediums, but I don't know quite how to help them work through, like, just keep going, keep trying. But they'll be like, that doesn't look very good, I'm done with drawing.
Yeah.
Or I'm not artistic, or I'm not, you know what I mean? Just to not just give up altogether. I don't know for sure.
Well, and I mean, maybe in their defense, so my family, interestingly, I didn't get a shred of like being able to draw. Like I draw and I'm like, like, oh, that didn't look at all, and I just kind of felt like, that's okay. I'm really interested in drawing, like my expression is verbal, or it was dance, or it was something else. And so if it's not something that they like enough to really work towards that discipline, I don't know that I'd sweat it that much.
I think that's probably really the key. Is just like, it was probably more something that I was wanting them to do rather than a passion they were interested in. That's probably it. I think you nailed it.
And sometimes it's hard to know. Like, so my daughter, Eloise, takes piano, and her sister can spend hours a day on the piano figuring out songs by ear and all of that. And Eloise is not, she doesn't have that same passion. She likes swimming, which is, not inherently artistic, although I went and watched her in swimming, and every time she passed me in her lane, she did this big face at me. So I was like, oh, there you go. She's being expressive. But anyway, I asked her, I was like, Eloise, do you want to be done with piano? That is fine. And then I said, I see that you're improving, and I see in choir, because she does Cash Children's Choir, I see that in choir, I notice as you are practicing some of the songs that you really have a good sense of where the music goes and what the timing should be. And I think that you've learned that in piano. But if you want to be done, I can support that because it saves me a lot of money, right? And she took about a day to think about it, and she decided she wanted to stick with it. And I don't know that it will ever be something that she does as an expression, unlike her sister who plays expressively, like that is something that Evelyn creates. But Eloise, I think, is just there for the skill and the experience, and it's fine. So anyway.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. That was a great question. You stumped me, Emily. Okay, so easy ways, and I don't know if there is anyone on here will watch later. The first part is, my big stump speech on like why art is essential. But not all of us feel like we're artists. Emily, you said that your kids, say, I'm not an artist, and I understand, like I will say all the time, I'm not a scientist. And what that means to me is that I'm not especially naturally curious about how things work. And I think that that's okay. But when I say that to people who are into science, they're like, oh, science is everywhere. Science is so exciting. And I feel that about art. So when people say, oh, I'm not an artist, or I'm not an artistic type, I'm like, no, don't say that. But if you have felt like that personally, or if you have kids that are a little bit more like that, there are some really easy things to do to expose your kids to art. And I think that the exposure is key, because, you know, the reality is some kids, Brooke, as you mentioned, have that really scientific mind where they're curious and they want to, you know, put things together and understand how things work. I think art can feed that, and it's really interesting. I was talking to my friend who's with the Utah Festival Opera, and he was saying a while ago, it was all the rage for college theses to be done, you know, like you have this scientific thesis that's done like in interpretive dance, and and I guess they kiboshed that, understandably, you know, like I don't know if that really really demonstrates that you have a full concept of what's going on. But anyway, I think there's this, you know, really beautiful overlap between art and science, or art and math. But if you don't naturally kind of gravitate to thinking that way, for me, I think it's all about exposure and finding out what the kids find is interesting, because you never know, like when they want to like try a drawing, you know, I'm gonna do a comic, you know, and then they do it and maybe they like it well enough to try again, or maybe they don't. But yeah, so, and then the other thing is to demonstrate. So this is titled How to Bring, there we go, How to Bring Art into Your Child's Realm of Experience. And then I thought that seems kind of weird or abstract, but I think as parents, we should demonstrate that creative expressions have value. And that is demonstrating. So creative expression is anything that you created, anything that reflects who you are and your thoughts and ideas. And even if those are wrong or, you know, ill-formed or whatever, that it's a piece of yourself, right? It's something that you created, and that has value. And I think kids, and I don't know that this is as true for homeschoolers, but, you know, like when everything is graded and compared, and then parents talk about grades, I think it's easy for kids to feel like, oh, if it can't be measured, if it can't be compared to anything else, then it doesn't matter. And so how do we teach our children that creative expression has value? The first thing I think it's easy to do is to provide a venue for expression. And by that, I mean, like if you have a kid that loves to dance, be the audience. Or if you have someone who's experimenting with poetry, hold a poetry reading at your house. My kids wanted to do and have done different art classes, you know, working at different co-ops and stuff. And we have all these, you know, like pieces of their experimental art that they weren't even especially passionate about, but we had it all. And I was like, let's do an art gallery. So we like, you know, we figured out how to display it in the basement, and we put out treats and we invited friends over. And I think those sorts of things, being the audience or having someone come over and do like grandma and grandpa and do like show and tell, hey, I created this thing or this play or this skit or this dance or whatever, as they're able to share it and have people interested in what they've created, I think that transmits that there is value, that people, you know, that the child receives, oh, this thing that is a piece of me, right, that has come out of that is my expression, that is my creation. Other people are interested in it. And I think that's really important, and it's not hard to do. And then the second one is, hold it up again if it's helpful, seek to experience every good thing, right, which is right up there with the 13th article of faith. Seek to experience every good thing at least once. And then I've specified or given some ideas like cultural events, free museum days, community events and celebrations, concerts, plays, ballets, symphonies, lessons and classes. I included worship services of other faiths, which may seem strange, but for me, so when I think of art, it's pretty large and all-encompassing, and it is an expression of someone's experience or their idea or their emotion. And obviously, religion is an expression of someone's faith, which I find is very beautiful, no matter how they choose to express it, and even no matter what they believe. But churches are a wonderful place to find art and to find music, and then to find, the verbal expression of belief. So I included that in there, and I wanted to explain why I think that is art, essentially. So yeah, and the cool thing about it is, and this, Janet, this would be maybe really helpful, because I've got different links and just different brainstorming ideas. Cache Valley is a really art-rich community. It's one of the reasons that I was excited to move here, because I felt like, it's not a big community, but it's not like you're living in the sticks. You've got all sorts of fun things that you can do that are really accessible for families. So I'll just mention a few of these quickly. Every second Saturday at the Nora Eccles Museum of Art, there's a family day. So we go to art museums, and I have to tell you, I don't feel like they're my kids' favorite thing in the world. And honestly, not all of the art in there is my favorite thing in the world. Jim Gaffigan has a bit about art museums, and I don't know if you haven't heard it. It's pretty funny. It's kind of how I feel, like, oh, this is what we're supposed to be impressed by, huh? And wrangling children in an art museum is another difficult thing, right? Like, that was part of his bit, is they're in there acting like, don't touch the art, and he's like, I wasn't going to, but now I kind of want to. So when we go to art museums, I'm just there for the exposure, and I like to go when it's free, because then if we're in and out in 20 minutes, it doesn't matter. I tell my kids, like, we'll go into a room that's, filled with various art or whatever, and I just say, find your favorite piece and stand by it, and I'll walk around and you tell me why it's your favorite. And that kind of helps them to, kind of compare and contrast, understand what's interesting to them, then I understand what's interesting to them. They don't have to sometimes I'll go and stand by them and they'll be like, I just like this one best. And I'm like, okay, well, was there something you liked best about it? Like, I noticed that there's a lot, it's more colorful, or, maybe the subject, like there's people in this one, or the people in this one are better looking than the people in the other one, or whatever. But that's the other thing we do, which is really fun. I have like this whole collection. We were back east last summer, and so we went to we saw all this amazing art, Degas and Renoir and Monet and Manet and all that. Anyway, so, I'm like, this is amazing. It's so famous. Like, so excited that we're seeing this like real piece of original artwork that I've only ever seen in pictures before. And the kids are like, meh. But I was like, go stand by it and imitate the pose. So we have all these funny pictures of us, like imitating whatever it is that has been, depicted in the scene, or trying to be a part of the scene. And I don't know if that like adds to the kids' appreciation of art, but it makes art museums a much more fun experience than they can otherwise be. So I wanted to share those things with you. And if you ever want to see my collection of classic pieces of art with the cast persons in front being goofballs, I'm happy to share. So locally, Logan has a gallery walk every Friday of even months from 6 to 9, except this month, for whatever reason, they changed this month to December 20th. Our family does this as often as we can. And in all honesty, the kids, I think, love it for the free treats. And there's some the artist gallery that's out of the Bolin Center usually has really great treats, and Cafe Ibis usually has really great treats. That one you have to watch a little bit more, because sometimes they'll have like coffee or tea flavored things, and depending on your belief system, if that's a no-no, you have to say, oh, you can't have that. But anyway, we love it. Another cool thing about that is that often the artists that have created the art for the gallery walk are right there, and so you can talk to them about the art that they've created, or awkwardly compliment them. For me, it's like celebrity sightings, and I act all goofy. I don't know why I do that. It's so dumb. But anyway, so that's this December 20th, and included in this gallery stroll is the gingerbread parade of homes. So if you haven't ever gone, that's super fun, and the kids love that, and you can vote on your favorite gingerbread. And it's all downtown through the different galleries and businesses downtown. casharts.org/gallery walk. You can find out more about that. The art museum is artmuseum.usu.edu/event/index university. So it's a lot more convoluted address. There's the Tabernacle concert series that goes on now. And in the summer, my favorite days to go to the concert series at the Tabernacle are Mondays and Thursdays and Fridays. That's when the opera and then the Old Lyric Repertory Company perform. And so it's a great way to go see opera and musicals pieces. You know, it's not anything like the full thing, but it has made us, I think that might be why Evelyn is such a musical theater fan. We didn't take her to musicals. We took her to the Tabernacle, and she saw amazing voices doing, you know, portraying all sorts of emotions, and I think she got into it. It's how we got introduced to Hamilton. Someone saying "You'll Be Back," the King George's solo about pining for the colonies, and we were like, that was so fun. I don't know that I would have otherwise looked it up. I'm not a huge musical theater person otherwise, but anyway, so all of those sorts of things, or, you know, the university often will have free concerts and free whatever, and we have often gone and been like, oh my gosh, that was the worst. What a waste of an evening. No, not when it's the university, but we stumbled on it was called a concert. I was like, that was a recital. That was a child's recital, and recitals are kind of a bummer if we're being honest. Anyway, but it doesn't keep us from going back, because it's all experience. And that's what I tell my kids. Like, for example, we've gone to different worship services of other faiths, and they've said before as we're walking in, like, what if it's boring? And I'm like, well, that'd be so interesting if it's boring. Like, we'll get to look around and notice all the other people that are there and wonder what it is that they're there for, because it's so boring. Then let's see, their school shows. So not all of the shows, but a lot of the like professional shows that come through the Eccles Theater do school shows. And so if you email the gal in charge of those, Robin Hoth is her name. She's at rhoth@casharts.org. And then you get an email to find out when those performances are. And they cost $1. They used to be free. Now they're $1 to go. But I haven't been to one that I was disappointed by. They are fantastic. They are really good. It's the real live, real deal. This isn't kids on stage. It's, you know, these professional touring groups, and we've seen the Mariachi Divas and all sorts of different things, but it's always Momix, and that was modern dance, and the kids were enthralled. Anyway, it was awesome. And then homeschool classes that come up, you know, like there's homeschool art and homeschool dance and homeschool everything, is just a great way for, you know, to take a small little taste for not very much money, to just try something and see what sticks. So that's how to bring art into your child's realm of experience. The last part that I wanted to discuss is kind of the point of this whole thing, right? How to encourage your child's creativity. And I'll move on, but tell me how everyone's doing for time, and if you're skeptical that I'm not going to get to something that you really wanted to hear about. Good? Okay. All right. So how to encourage your child's creativity. Got this low-key visual aid again. Number one, mindset. What have I got? Your child is an artist, and this is, again, this might just be me, like everything is art and art is everywhere. But I define artist as someone with unique perspective of the world to share. And that is really every human being that lives on the earth. Every human being has a unique perspective. And if they're allowed to, and if they understand that their sharing can be valuable, they do share. And it's not always in making a painting or a piece of music or a ballet, but whatever it is that they create is how they share. So I compared all of that. We've got the metaphor of the tree. So in the metaphor of the tree, the seed is your child, the tree are his or her talents, and the fruit is his or her art, and art, in quotes, is the unique expression of an idea and or an experience. Put really simply, I say art is communication. And when I used to go teach in the schools about ballet, I would ask, why is ballet not a sport? It's very physical. There are ballet competitions, but why do we think of ballet as an art and not a sport? And my answer was because ballet's primary objective is to communicate, right? Versus, sport is a competition. So anyway, so that's the mindset, is that your child is an artist. So after you understand what art is and that your child is an artist, the next one is to discover where the seed grows best. And that is hunting for their artistic discipline, which might not be a quote artistic discipline. It might just be, it might be science or math or gardening or whatever. But that's the process of exposing them to everything, every good thing. In my family, I was laughing about this today, thinking of like how I think of everything as art or a cultural experience. So a few years back, we took my oldest son, who's a dancer, and 2 other dancers to Seattle for 5 weeks so they could train. And we had the opportunity to go to a Marlins game, and the other dancers were like, oh, we don't want to go. We're not into sports. And I was just like, what does that have to do with it? Like, it's a cultural experience. You get to like be there and smell the smells and hear the people yelling and cheering and all of that. Like it's a cultural experience. And then we went and did improv theater, and the boys, one of the boys was like, I don't really like comedy. And I'm like, what does that have to do with it? It's an experience. So that hunting for their artistic discipline is doing everything. And I, on number 3, well, let's get to number 3. Okay, so you nourish the seed with experience, and see what takes root and what grows from that. And when I say, see what takes root, I mean note what they are interested in, what brings them joy, what lights up their eyes, where they spend their time. That is where that seed is beginning to take root. And so number 2 and number 3 is not the same thing as overscheduling. And I wanted to mention that, because I'm like, everything's art, do everything, try everything. I think that, means see how much time your kids have. If they come to you and say they're bored, if you're sitting at home watching movies night after night, those are the times when you put that in. It's not like, okay, you're going to do, 15 extracurriculars and be in lessons all the time, because downtime is needed for creation. And creation is the fruit, right? Creation is the end goal. And so I don't mean to imply to anybody that we should be running about, frantically trying to get our kids to do everything and try everything.
Stephanie,
Yeah.
I just was thinking as you were talking about how you're also teaching your kids that no matter what kind of expression somebody is offering, there's value in observing and learning and seeing things from that perspective too, which is an interpersonal relationship tool.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Janet. To go all spiritual on it, I find beauty in all expressions of excellence. So when I go to sporting events and watch an amazing play, it's like a spiritual experience for me. It's like, wow, God gave somebody that gift to do that. And I can't fathom the skill and the strength and the training that went into this thing that I just saw, but it's so beautiful and it brings that person joy, and that's beautiful too. So yeah, I'm a little bit of a nut that way. But I talked to my siblings about it. We were having a spiritual discussion, just talking about what it is that we think is manifestations of the Holy Ghost or the Spirit. And I was just like, I see it everywhere. I see it in an amazing basketball, maneuver or whatever. And I don't know how it was that our parents communicated that with us, but my siblings had the same experience. And when I think about my parents, they did all of the things that I'm talking about today. I'm the oldest of 9. They had 7 boys after me, and I have another little sister. So it's not like we got to go to art museums. You have a whole host of little boys, you know why. But they were so supportive of the individual. So I have a brother that owns a roofing company. I have a brother that does videography. I have a brother that's a professional writer. I have a brother that owns a clothing company. And I look at their career paths and how everything came together, and I'm like, I think it was my parents, like my mom being like, oh, you want to wear that to school? That's a little gnome outfit. Go ahead. She was just so good at just rolling with how they express themselves. And so the brother that owns a clothing company has also been a stand-up comedian. It was just, and that whole idea of a time for creation and a time to clean up, actually, I think it's a really good idea, but it came from my other brother, who's the writer, who wore the little gnome outfits to school. He wanted to entertain his class all the time, and his teacher said, Joel, it's not the time, but if the class is really, this is his second grade teacher, but if the class is really good, then we'll be finished early and you can have the last 5 minutes to stand up and, tell your jokes and all of that. And the class loved it, and Joel loved it, and everybody, whatever. And he said that it taught him that he wasn't wrong for wanting to entertain. It just wasn't the right time. And so that whole idea of that I want to, spend 2 hours on the piano and ignore my mother when she's asked me to do work, that isn't wrong. It's just not the right time, and to find the time to, yeah. So anyway, my parents did great at that, and which kind of leads me to my next point. Criticism shuts down creativity, and this one doesn't come to me naturally, because ballet is all about finding what's wrong and fixing it. So I think I have a really natural creative or critical, not maybe creative, but critical mind. But in the parable or the whatever of the tree, in the comparison, the metaphor of the tree, I put tender plants don't need whole truckloads of manure. And so don't fix it. Don't make it better. Don't ask, what is it? Which I don't remember where I learned that. But, when your kid is all excited and they bring you the thing that they've drawn, I learned that isn't a good question. Don't ask, what is it? Supportive statements are things like, I like the colors, or tell me about it, or you looked really happy when you XYZ, or what did you like best about this experience or this thing that you made or whatever. That was a difficult thing for me to learn as my son became a more and more skilled dancer. But at some point I was like, he needs his mom to be a supportive audience member, and so, it's like, well, how do I help him? He wants to be pro. I have the knowledge and the skill set to help him progress, but he needs me as that supportive audience member. What do I do? And that leads me to kind of the next thing. So in that instance where you have a kid that has found their passion, and they, maybe Emily mentioned, them bringing their picture, and it's not the way they want it, but they want it to get better. There are ways to express feedback more constructively, especially if you have the experience, to say, and I've learned to say this, where do I say this? I've been helping my daughter with the monologue. So in acting, maybe try, or, it helps me when I've done XYZ or whatever. But when they're ready to move on, that move a thriving plant to a bigger pot to inspire growth. And that is, if and when your child wants to increase his or her talents or skills, and it might be a hobby, talent, or skill, and they're content with it being a hobby or talent or skill, and I think that's great. I don't think there's anything, we don't all need to be professional dancers. We don't all need to be professional painters. We don't all need to pursue our artistic, venue to its highest level. But if you have a child that wants to, provide exposure to excellence and excellent teachers and or peers, and let this exposure inspire. And I think that's just huge, that if you have, for me, it's most evident in ballet. If you have a kid that wants to become a better dancer, then the best way to help them understand what they need is to go see great dancing and work with great teachers. And I think that would be true for anything. If you have a kid that wants to be a great piano player, and it's easier, right, with piano, with music, because we're surrounded by great music. That's all we actually listen to is great music. We don't listen, we don't ever listen to a recording of a symphony like being out of tune or blowing it. It's that finished product or that excellence which really inspires people to move on. And then finally, let the tree grow to full maturity. Don't predetermine the size or shape or rip it out after one season of fruiting. That means to not be the limiting factor or reason why the tree or the talent stop growing or producing fruit. So when your kid finds that passion, to let them see it through to the end. I had a student of mine who was a dancer here in the Valley. Her mom called me privately and said, my daughter loves ballet. She absolutely loves it, but she doesn't have a good ballet body and she doesn't have the right feet. And her mother had assessed the reality of that situation absolutely correctly. This girl was limited in her physique. She didn't look like what you'd think a ballerina looking like. And she, but she had the heart. And I was like, I'm going to tell you what I think, and then I'm going to ask all the dancer people I know what their feedback is. But I was like, her love for ballet is a gift in her life, and it will fuel her life, whatever she does and wherever she goes. And I would never tell you to try and protect her from a future heartache by saying you can't do this anymore. I'd never do that. And then I reached out to all of my dancer buddies and asked the same question. And some of them were from my training and others had gone pro, and some had gone pro, but their careers didn't go where they wanted them to go, and said, does anyone regret putting all of your time and energy into this thing, when it didn't go the way you wanted it to go or where you hoped it would go? And there wasn't one person that said, I wish someone had told me to stop. I wish someone had protected me from this pain. Not a single one. They all just talked about how their passion and their dedication and their drive and their experience blessed everything else that they did. And so when I got that feedback, I gave that to her as well. Like, everyone says no. Everyone says absolutely, let her take this as far as it will go. Well, after that conversation, she decided she was dancing part-time training down at Ballet West. And that was a difficult situation for her. It took a lot of work for her to even get her foot in the door, because as I mentioned, she didn't look like a ballerina. But she got her foot in the door, and I was like, you need to get your leg in the door now, go down there and do some more with them. Over about the period of a year, all of the teachers learned to really love her. And when I would run into them and I'd be talking about my son, they would say, oh, and we just love this other dancer. She works so hard, and she is so, she's an inspiration to the other class members. But they still didn't want to bump her up to the next level. And I think it was just all, physical limitations. So she moved down there. She started training full time. It took another while. And meanwhile, I'm, I'm at the shows and I'm like, she's a better dancer than these other kids that they're really liking. that have the right physique. She finally, I don't know what convinced them, but she just sparkles on stage. She finally was given some leading roles. Anyway, she went out to Portland to train. There's the Portland Ballet is a smaller company. It's not as big as Ballet West, but it's a good company. And she got out there, and they loved her. They taught this dance, and her mother told me, because her mother got to go and watch like the final couple days. At some point, she'd done the dance, and she stopped, and the teacher said, "I hope everyone was watching this girl that I had worked with. I hope everyone was watching this girl. Her expression as she danced, her musicality was better than anyone else. You all are just doing steps, and she's actually dancing it." And they asked her to stay for the year. She's back at Ballet West. I don't know what will happen, but she is having this incredible experience, getting all this positive feedback. And so I feel really strongly that sometimes as parents, I think we want to like protect our kids or say, maybe you shouldn't do that. They're not as good as you should be. And we can't do that, because the passion that comes with creativity is the gift, right? I'm not a dancer anymore, but that's a whole other topic of like, I could go on for hours about what ballet has meant in my life, how it's blessed me. And if our children can find something that nourishes them and feeds them in that way, that's the beauty right there. And I think I'll end on that note.
Thank you, Stephanie. I had to unmute myself, but thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. I've taken notes. I think it'll be very helpful to us. Just real quick, does anyone who is either on the call or on the video have a closing comment or something that you're going to take home especially?
Oh yeah.
You're just so inspiring. I love it. I was so excited to listen. I didn't really know what you were going to share, but beautiful. So I love it. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooke.
Yeah. I'm excited. I'm gonna make sure my sister gets on, because there's a lot of stuff in here that is so great for any family.
Oh, good. Good. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Thanks, Steph, for your time. Sorry, I've lost my voice. I'm hard to hear right now. But I was just telling my husband something about you the other night, and I said something that Stephanie has taught me is she is not concerned with the norm.
Mm-mm.
And I think that is really healthy. I think you can see it in your kids. Your kids are like confident in who they are and what they love. And that's really healthy, to not be like, oh, but not everyone else is doing this, or every other teenage boy does sports, not ballet, Kai. Like, it's just a really healthy approach, I think, to being confident with who you are and gifts that God has given you, to not be so consumed with what may or may not be popular in our society as far as norms. I think you're really good at producing that confidence. So it's
Thanks,
great.
Emily. I think that comes back to just that mindset of the artist's way. We're all completely unique with a unique perspective to share with the world, and if we try and imitate, we lose a piece of that. And so, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. My kids might all wind up, utter failures.
No, they won't.
20 years.
No, they won't.
Yeah, I think all children. My brother, who was a stand-up comic and now owns this line of clothing, I posted something to the family group of like, hey, Kai just did this amazing, cool thing. And he kind of teases me, and I don't know how much he was teasing and how much he wasn't, but he was like, like, you think Kai is so great, but maybe there's just not that much competition in the world. And do you think all your kids are great? And I stopped and I thought of his darling children, who are amazing, and they're incredible little handfuls. I think his oldest is maybe before, and his wife, yeah, they just had one. And anyway, they're a handful little family, his three little ones. And I thought of them and their beautiful personalities and who they were, and I just thought, don't you see your children as these amazing individuals who can do anything? Like I see my children that way, you know, and I don't know what that anything will be. I don't know if they'll be stars or Olympic swimmers or anything like that. But I think there's something amazing in them, and I see that in your kids, and I see that in all kids, that they're just amazing individuals. And so anyway, maybe, yeah, I was just like, oh, it never had occurred to me that not everyone thought their children were these amazing geniuses.
I think we do see our children that way. I think we're afraid in our culture to express that.
Oh,
And I'm grateful for your presentation today that will help us be able to express that and to help our children more.
right. It doesn't, that our children have something unique doesn't mean that they are amazing or perfect, for sure.
Right, right.
But they are, yeah, well, I said that doesn't mean they're amazing. It doesn't mean what they're expressing is,
Right.
from time to time, Kai, you're not God's gift to ballet.
Right. But we are the gift to ourselves, and I appreciate
Absolutely.
you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, thank you. This was way fun for me. Thanks, Janet, for inviting me.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. I will get the recording out, but it might be a week or two before I figure out how to edit it well.
Have some downtime, Janet. After your wedding, you probably deserve a couple days off.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, you guys.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.